Welcome back to another edition of the Here We Go podcast. I am your host, Trent Gang, and we're going to talk a little bit about Aaron Rodgers. I know that's a shocker to everybody. We don't have a quarterback in Pittsburgh. Mason Rudolph's not the guy right now. So it's either the NFL draft or we're going to wait on Aaron Rodgers. And it's not surprising that he's going to make us wait because it's kind of how he is, has spent his entire career, right? Like he's always tried to be the guy who wanted to be in the limelight. He wants to be the spotlight of every single team. He wants his name in the papers. He wants his name in the media at all times. Is he actually a fit, though? Like, are we a better or worse team with Aaron Rodgers? And I think that's going to be the biggest question that everybody wants to know going into this season. Like, does he actually make sense? And I still think right now, I mean, we're out of options. That's pretty abundantly clear. So I don't think that's really up for debate. Aaron Rodgers, even right now, is a better quarterback than anything that's on the market. He's better than anything that's probably in the NFL draft outside of maybe Cam Ward at this point. Like, even if Shador Sanders falls to 21, I'm still probably taking Aaron Rodgers at 41 years old going into his 42nd year of life. Like, I just don't think there's a better option out there. And I don't know if Shador is a guy who could become a quarterback that should be valued at 21, but I just don't think he's at that point right now. He's a guy who holds on to the ball too long. He plays hero ball. He, is going to come with his own baggage just because, his dad is who he is. But Aaron Rodgers, if you're going to make the debate to me that Aaron Rodgers is more of a diva than Shador Sanders and what Shador is going to bring, then I'm not sure that I'm on board with that because I think they're pretty in line with each other. Like, if you're looking for, should we go get a guy who's 42 and pay him $25 million a year? Maybe. I mean, are we even at $25 million right now? The Giants just signed up Russ. The Browns probably are not drafting a quarterback. They're probably not looking for a quarterback. You're basically down to the Vikings if you buy into that philosophy, and I don't. And I really honestly think that we're down to right now, it's Pittsburgh or just retirement. Yes. The short answer to this is yes. I think there needs to be a deadline because we're getting inside of a month of the NFL draft, and I think that the deadline needs to be, we're about to scout a lot of quarterbacks. You've seen them make the rounds already. They've been to Ohio State's Pro Day. Of course, there's a ton of guys there. They've been to Texas Pro Day. Ton of guys there, right? So Alabama's going to be another school that's going to pump out prospects. So you can make the argument that they're just there to just see guys who are there possibly in the third round. You can also make the argument that right now they're just scouting guys who are probably going to be not quarterback related in the third round too. So I don't think that right now we should be sitting around waiting on Aaron Rodgers to make a decision. I think we need to be sitting here saying, like, we need to make Aaron Rodgers make a decision sooner rather than later because we have to scout this combine. We have to scout the NFL draft. We don't have a ton of picks. We have 6 total selections spread out over 7 rounds, and 2 of them are 7th round picks. So, like, we're not in a great spot to draft a quarterback right now. So I think that this has to be in a situation where Aaron's going to be forced into a decision. So why shell out $30 million? I don't know if he's going to ruin the locker room, but I mean, is he going to be worse than what's available? And I would not give him $30 million. I don't think I'd give him $30 million or even close to it now. He has no options. I think the price tag should be going down at this point, because why would we be desperate if we already know we're pretty much either going in on Aaron Rodgers right now, or, I mean, how much worse is Mason Rudolph at $4 million a year? I mean, it's definitely a big difference. Just don't get me wrong, but like, it's definitely not $26 million a year difference. Like, I think we do need to get Aaron in the room, but we need to put a timetable on this thing and make him make a decision, because he just does not seem to be interested in being here right now. And I think that's the biggest thing about this whole thing. So, I mean, I think what's the theory? I really want to know the theory. Just type that thing out, because I'm really interested in seeing what your theory is. Yeah, I don't want to draft a quarterback early either. I mean, like, Jalen Milroe is the guy who's going to pop up a lot of times. If you ask me between Jalen Milroe, Jackson Dart, Quinn Ewers, and Will Howard, Quinn Ewers is probably the guy who's right now being mocked after everybody else. He's also the guy that probably has the most talent. Not just arm talent, but he probably has the most actual physical talent among everybody else in the draft. Cam Ward is the guy. Quinn Ewers has the most talent beyond Cam Ward, but he had a terrible season this year when it comes to putting himself in the spotlight of NFL quarterbacks. He was injured. He played throughout most of the year injured, and he did not show up like he should have. Probably should have went back to college for another year, if we're being honest with ourselves. But if I'm taking a gamble on a quarterback in this draft class at all, like, I feel like Quinn Ewers should be the guy, because he was the one guy. He was kind of top of his class. He can throw from a ton of different arm slots, right? He has the arm talent. He's mobile enough. He's not super mobile, but he's mobile enough. Like, he can move around. I still think Quinn Ewers is the guy to go after in this draft. I've said that pretty much since day one, and I don't believe there's a reason to go backwards on that based on the class, because there's so many deficiencies in everybody that's in the class outside of, I mean, even Cam Ward is not like a true lock at number one. Like, this is not the best quarterback class that we've seen in a long time. And it's not going to be the best class. I mean, you can maybe have two of these guys come out and be starters in the NFL, and it's still basically a below average class. So if I'm taking a shot on somebody, I'd rather take a shot on the guy who probably slips into falling into being a starting quarterback in the NFL, and that's Quinn Ewers to me. Will Howard's backup. I thought he was a 7th-round pick, and I love Ohio State, but I always thought he was a 7th-round pick in most classes, and this class is going to bump up just because of the fact there's nobody there. Jalen Milroe has the same tools as Lamar Jackson, but I don't think you can bet on the tools, because you don't know what he's going to become. And there's a lot of deficiencies there. He's a major, major project. So if I'm betting on a guy, I'm just going to go ahead and take a swing on Quinn Ewers and just hope he turns out. If we don't sign, we trade Pickens for a second. I mean, like, I would wait on a 3rd-round quarterback. I don't want to overdraft, because I feel like we're going to put ourselves in the same spot as where we were with Kenny Pickett. And I think Kenny was overdrafted pretty safe to say that he was overdrafted. So I don't know. I don't want to go into that same trap again. And I think this entire class is going to put us right back in the same spot we were in 2022, where we took Kenny Pickett in the 1st round. Kenny Pickett was probably a 3rd-round quarterback. And that's why I probably make a lot of correlation between he and Jackson Dart. I mean, I feel like they're very similar. Their height, somewhat of their build. I know Jackson Dart's a little heavier. Arm talent probably goes a little bit better to Jackson Dart, but like I really feel like there's a lot of similarities between he and Kenny Pickett. And I think in the NFL, it's going to see a lot of translation between the two guys. Yeah, I mean, I get where you're coming from with this. So what would be the leverage at this point, though? I mean, it's between the Vikings or the Steelers at this point for Aaron Rodgers. So if we're talking about leverage, I don't know what leverage Aaron even has. The Vikings basically said they're going to kind of hang around. And I think the Vikings are pretty much waiting around to say, like, if Aaron would sign here for a really minimal discounted price at maybe, let's say, $15 million, they might make that deal. Like 1 year, $15 million. We've got JJ McCarthy ready. If JJ is actually not ready, should we sign Aaron Rodgers right now? I think they would be willing to make that kind of a deal and just see who wins out in camp. And if Aaron doesn't win out, I mean, that's backup money. So why would Aaron want to go there, though, is kind of my question. Like, if the price tag, let's say the price tag's at $25 million in Pittsburgh. Number one, why would Minnesota want to give $25 million to Aaron Rodgers when you've got a guy you took in the top 10, just, this is his second season. If you don't believe in the guy that you took there because he was injured his first season, then why did you draft him in the first place? Number one. Number two, is Aaron Rodgers better than a guy that you took in the top 10? If so, then like you really messed up in your top 10 pick. That's kind of how I look at it. If Pittsburgh's even willing to pay him $25 million, you're probably pushing the top of his market anyway. Because I think Matthew Stafford, I still haven't seen his contract, and maybe I missed it. But things I saw were that Matthew Stafford signed for $27 to $28 million. And if Aaron Rodgers is getting that kind of money, then something went horribly wrong. Because he's nowhere near as good as Matthew Stafford. Matthew Stafford was the top 10 quarterback last year. And he deserves every dollar he got. Aaron Rodgers is still playing at a pretty decent level, but like I don't think he's a guy who should be playing or getting paid like he's a top 10 quarterback, even for his age. So I agree with this too. So they should have actually used Fields probably a lot more than they did. And Russ wasn't a very good quarterback. And the Giants are going to find that out really quickly. I mean, I get that. And I mean, they should look to upgrade their roster any way that they can. And that's probably something that Minnesota's kind of waiting out. But at the same time, like, if you're Aaron Rodgers, why would you play for less than $20 million? And if you're Minnesota, why would you pay more than $20 million for a guy who potentially could be a backup to your top 10 drafted quarterback? I was never a guy who believed in JJ. Like, he was not relied on very much at Michigan. He was not a guy who was asked to do a lot at Michigan. Didn't think he should be in the top 10. Kind of thought he might be in the end of the first round. Probably should have been more of a second round pick, but that's just kind of the way the NFL draft works. So I think they messed that up. I think they knew they messed that up. And that's kind of where I'm at with this entire draft. I just don't think they should have drafted a quarterback this year. I don't think they should be in a hurry to get a guy inside the top 30 rounds. We don't have a second round pick. If you want to take a swing late. And that's why if Quinn Ewers is going to be in their fourth round, fifth round, whatever, that's when you draft a quarterback in this class, because none of them are good. You're going to miss on probably someone. Are we really looking to invest a top round 1 through 3 pick into a guy who's probably a career backup anyway, like that, I don't want to do that. That's just not where I'm at. So I would not do that at all. And I agree with this too. That's actually when I started to make the point about Aaron Rodgers being a Minnesota Viking. I started exactly where you're at right now. I think they do have better weapons. I mean, Justin Jefferson, best receiver in the league. I don't think there's any question about that right now. Jordan Addison's a fantastic receiver. TJ Hawkinson is another guy who's a fantastic weapon to go along with, I think it's I don't think it's just a better offensive line. I think it's like a really underrated offensive line. And I made the exact point that you're making right now with the division. Just the NFC in general is easier to get to the Super Bowl than the AFC because you don't have the same kind of quarterbacks in that entire side of the NFL as what we have in the AFC. I mean, you have Burrow and you have Mahomes and you have Josh Allen. I mean, you just go down the line of guys that are in the AFC. It's not a cakewalk. And in the NFC, it's, right now, who's the best quarterback in the NFC? I mean, is it Jalen Hurts just because they won the Super Bowl this year? Like, you could probably talk about some guys, but like it's nowhere near the same as what it is on the AFC side. So totally agree with you. I think that O-line is very underrated. I think they should get way more love than they do. And, that's kind of why I was like very curious to see if Aaron Rodgers decided to move to the Minnesota Vikings just for the sheer fact they have a ton of weapons. Aaron Jones, running back. I mean, he's been a solid running back, really good running back in this league for a long time. To me, it'd make a lot more sense for him to try to go get another ring in Minnesota, but Minnesota doesn't seem nearly as eager as he is. And that could be just their way of playing their cards. So I don't know. I think that the class still, if you're going to look at it, Aaron Rodgers, sadly enough, it is still the best option Pittsburgh Steelers have right now because I don't see anything else that you're going to do. Like, if you want to reach for a guy in this class, like you're throwing away a draft pick, probably could get a much better player at whatever selection they choose to take it. If you take a first round quarterback, then there's absolutely a better option. Definitely a better option at running back. Definitely a better option at wide receiver. There's definitely a better option at defensive tackle, which is where I think they're probably going to lean, and probably rightfully where they should be leaning is at defensive tackle. If you're in the third round, I still think you could get a better, at least running back. If you don't take a defensive lineman in the first round, you still can get better defensive lineman. Should you be looking at safety? Should you be looking at offensive tackle, offensive guard, some positions that might be a little underrated and kind of flying under the radar right now? I don't think it'd be out of the question for me to look at that position as opposed to going to the quarterback, because I think you're going to be banking on a lot of like what ifs in this quarterback class to say, hey, we can maybe find a starter here. You've made every move throughout the offseason, lining it up to be a quarterback in 2026. There's a lot of smoke coming out because of the visits that we've seen. They're meeting with all these guys before the pro days. So the stuff's going to be out there that the Pittsburgh Steelers met with. Jalen Milroe. Doesn't matter. I still don't think they're taking him. I don't see why they would take him. It just doesn't make sense to me. Like, if he falls in the third round and you want to take a flyer on him and you can still like feel like you really get a guy at running back, because, defensive line and running back are really the two biggest needs right now on the team. You can get that guy in the fourth or fifth round, then okay. You want to take a flyer on a Jalen Milroe, just, let him be the backup and see what happens. If he develops into Lamar Jackson, great. I mean, like, whatever. But I probably don't want to me, I don't want to invest my resources there. That's just kind of where I'm at. So, um, I mean, how much less, I guess, would be the question. Like, and why at his age would he take a ton less? So I mean, it's not just a matter of taking less. Like, if Pittsburgh's offering 25, let's say 25 million is the year, the annual salary. Let's say it's one. Sounds like he wants more than 1 year. So even if it's 2 years and they only guarantee the first year, it's at 25 million. Let's say they fully guarantee the first year, but the second year is a bunch of just crap incentives, and they can basically get out of that contract in year two. I mean, what would Aaron be willing to take beyond that? Would he take 20 million to go to the Vikings? Would he take 15 million? I think that's kind of like where all this like. I mean, Jerry Dulac is not the guy who's like always 100% accurate, but he really does know a ton about what's going on within the organization. And according to him, money has not been a problem for like 2 weeks now. So, like, I mean, how far off are the Steelers? I guess that I don't think it's about that. I think it's just more the Vikings right now aren't interested. He's waiting on the Vikings, and I think we're sitting here saying, "Hello, do you want to come here?" Like, this is a terrible spot. It really is. If it's a huge part of this, absolutely. I agree with this actually. I think Kenneth Grant should be the first round pick. I think he is the guy they run to the podium for. I think they like other players, but I'm also with you on trading down. I think if Kenneth Grant is not there, it does make a ton of sense to trade down. And I think if they can get a second round pick and stay within the first round, they really can improve this roster pretty drastically in a year and then load up on that second, class in 2026 going after the quarterback. So it does make a ton of sense. Well, I mean, they have basically everybody's on the table next year for whether they bring him back or whether they don't. Deshaun Elliott after next season will be a free agent. Do they want to re-sign him? They only signed Thornhill for a 1-year deal. Minkah Fitzpatrick's going to have a $25 million cap hit in 2026. Do you want to keep him on the roster for $25 million? It kind of makes sense to look at safety right now because I just don't think that this team has any idea what they're going to do, because I brought this up at the beginning of last season, and a lot of people didn't like it. Colin, who I do a lot of live shows with, hated it. He's a huge Minkah Fitzpatrick fan. But I kind of brought up the idea of what if the Pittsburgh Steelers were willing to trade Minkah Fitzpatrick, and what if they could get a third-round pick for him or something in that ballpark? I don't think it's crazy. And would they keep him for that kind of a pick? Or, I mean, I'm sorry, for that kind of a cap hit in 2026 if he has the same kind of season he had this year? I wouldn't. Like, I don't know. I mean, is it a safety for $26 million or $25 million or whatever is a huge cap hit, and that's just not where I'm at. This is the name that keeps getting brought up right now. I mean, he is definitely a big-time player and a guy who kind of seems to fit the Minkah Fitzpatrick role. He seems to be a pretty natural replacement if they wanted to go this route. So I think he is somebody who should be on the lookout, and I think that's a big part of why they were in Texas. I mean, there was a number of guys that was there. They wanted a scout. Alfred Collins is probably one of the guys high up on that list. Alfred Blue is probably a guy high up on that list. I know everybody wants to probably tie Matthew Golden there. I'm not a huge Matthew Golden fan, but I'm sure he's probably there too. It just depends on what happens with Aaron Rodgers. So I think safety is being undervalued right now in the plans right now. Yeah. I mean, 100%. And I think that his name carries a lot of weight right now. And I think there's a lot of players that still value what he does, especially offensive guys. I mean, there's a lot of quarterbacks that still bring up Minka Fitzpatrick when they talk about game plan. And I think that he strikes a little bit of fear in the eyes of some of the quarterbacks in the NFL, but he's not been the same guy. And that's either scheme related, and I think we're going to find out this season. I think the Darius Slay signing lets this team do what they want to do defensively, and you're going to find out really quickly within the first 4 weeks of the season. Is it Minka Fitzpatrick or is it just scheme? He was playing way, way, way off the ball a lot this past season. And if we're going to do more press coverage because we have Darius Slay and Joey Porter Jr., and whoever ends up in the slot, you're going to find out really quickly if Minka is worth that $25 million cap hit. So I don't think it's crazy to entertain a trade. I wouldn't even think it's crazy to entertain a trade this year. I don't know. I mean, I started that idea and that conversation last year. I don't think it's crazy. So we'll see what happens. But I'm going to get back to the quarterback position here for just a minute. I really think that Aaron Rodgers is the best and probably the only realistic fit as a starting quarterback for the Pittsburgh Steelers. If you don't take Aaron, then you're looking at, in my opinion, the earliest you go get a guy is in the third round. There's no first round quarterback. That's going to fall to 21. Shedeur Sanders, maybe the fringe guy of that group. Jackson Dart, I want no parts of him. I've been very vocal on that. People hate me for that for some reason, but Jackson Dart he's not a starting quarterback in this league. Tyler Shuck, I think, is actually an interesting name because he can kind of throw it all over the place. He's been injured a ton. He's super old for this class. He's 25, going to be a rookie at 25. That's kind of crazy to me, but he's a guy who can throw it all over the yard. So he's an interesting name to keep an eye on. I think Jalen Milroe does make a ton of sense from the standpoint that you just want to go all in on potential and just see what happens. He would be kind of your Justin Fields-esque kind of guy. He would be a guy that at least you have the tools there. But does Pittsburgh even have the right coaching staff to develop that guy? I mean, that kind of be more of my question with him than anything else. Is like, I don't know that we have somebody who can develop Jalen Milroe right now. Like, I mean, there's nobody on this staff that I feel like we could probably bring in and say, make this kid a star or make him Lamar Jackson. That would be tough. That'd be really, really tough. Do we have somebody who could bring on a Quinn Ewers? I think he's probably the most realistic option in my opinion. I've been pretty vocal on Quinn Ewers since beginning back to last year. My two guys going into last year were Quinn Ewers and Cam Ward. And Cam Ward's about to be the top pick in the draft. So, I mean, I feel pretty good about what I thought about him dating back to last year. I still feel like Quinn Ewers has a ton of talent, and I just think that there's some untapped potential with him that hasn't been realized in college. It hasn't been put all together right now. I think he really, really needs to be looked at. I don't know. That's kind of where I'm at with him. Yeah, I mean, this is a huge issue with our coaching staff right now. We just do not have guys who are proven to develop quarterbacks. Tom Arth, this guy who was not there really at the beginning of Justin Herbert's career. He got there in year 3, I think. So he was not there in year 1. He was not there in year 2. He did not develop him. I mean, there is nobody on our coaching staff that has developed a young quarterback, and that's probably a kind of a big thing they should be looking at. And that's why I'm also really skeptical about where this team is going to go in the draft. And so when we see all these quarterbacks kind of tied to Pittsburgh, I'm a little skeptical about them drafting a quarterback because I'm not sure that we have the staff that's ready to nurture and develop a young guy and bring him along and make them into a starting quarterback. I think they should put some resources into that position. I don't know if they will because, we're all fans of this team and we've seen them throughout their history. They're not typically somebody who adds staffing. But I think that's something they should do for sure. And it's also why I'm kind of like more willing to take a swing on a guy in the late round than early round too. Because like if you're not going to invest in the coaching staff to develop a guy and you're just kind of taking a shot in the dark, like why not take a shot in the dark at a guy in a later round instead of a guy earlier in the rounds? Like especially in the class that at large part most of them have some issues. To be nice about this, like I mean, there's something about each one of these kids that you could point to and say like he's not ready for this, he's not ready for that. I think almost all these kids would benefit from sitting year one, and it's pretty evident outside of Cam Ward and probably maybe Shador. He holds the ball a ton. I think that the meeting between Aaron Rodgers and the Steelers' top brass had probably addressed this, and I would hope they address this. So I know Arthur Smith and Russ had the report come out, came from Russ's side, which is, I think, honestly, why Russ is not getting re-signed back here, oddly enough, because I don't know if they would have waited as long as they did had this not come out from Russ's team. I think that it made the relationship pretty strained between Russ and the organization. I mean, if you're going to bring in Aaron Rodgers, he should have the freedom to make all these changes at the line of scrimmage because Aaron Rodgers, quite frankly, at 41 years old and out of his prime, brings more clout to the table than Arthur Smith. And so I would be fine with that. I don't know if Mike Tomlin would be, but he should be fine with that. And I highly doubt Arthur Smith is fine with it, but he needs to be fine with it. And that might have been part of the conversation that happened. Because if Aaron Rodgers is going to come here, he's going to want some of this to go his way. He does need some concessions to be made. And I think the organization needs concessions to be made in their favor. So this needs to be a two-way street. And that could be partially why we've not seen the decision made at this point. I mean, so far, no one has said money's an issue. It's the offseason, so I mean, like, everything's on the table. But I don't think that money is an issue. And I think that Aaron Rodgers wants concessions on his side. He's not going to run this thing like he did with the New York Jets because the Jets were just a desperate team and he could do whatever he wanted. He could say whatever he wanted, and they would just absolutely bow down to him and give him anything that he wanted. That's why he brought in so many guys that he loved. I mean, they, made moves for Devontae Adams in the middle of the season. They brought in former receivers of his that he liked. They had his former assistant coach on staff. Pittsburgh's not going to do that, but they will have to give up some concessions to Aaron Rodgers to allow him to give some freedom. And if that came up as far as changing the plays of the line of scrimmage, like that was probably a discussion between Aaron, Arthur Smith, and also Aaron Rodgers. And I felt like there was more of a feeling out process more so than anything else. I mean, maybe they would. I don't know. Nathaniel Hackett is just, I don't think he's a very good offensive guy. I know he and Aaron got along but I don't see it. He's not had a ton of success in the NFL. I think Aaron made most of his success, to be perfectly honest with you. But um, I mean, if hiring an assistant coach for minimal money is going to bring Aaron Rodgers to the table, then like, who cares? Yeah, Bobby Slow would definitely be a great pickup. I thought he'd be a great pickup before we hired Arthur Smith. Quite honestly, I think he should have been an offensive coordinator. So I don't know. That's kind of where I was at with that. But I mean, where do you guys feel like this team is best suited at quarterback right now? Because to me, it's still Aaron Rodgers, and I don't think there's anybody in the class coming out that rounds 1 or 3 are going to make a ton of sense. I don't know. I just don't see anybody who's going to absolutely raise the bar. So that's kind of where I'm at with it right now. So it's been a while since I've done this. I wanted to kind of jump in. I agree. Rodgers definitely gives the most upside. He, at least if you want to win right now, if you want to sell this team on, we're going to make something out of nothing. Off field is definitely a big issue. But like, if you're getting Aaron Rodgers, will he keep George Pickens in check? Will he keep DK Metcalf in check? We're going to have a ton of big personalities on this team to begin with. And I think that's kind of my biggest question mark is like, how much do those guys just respect him to where they kind of stay under control? And I wonder if he draws enough of his background to say, like, hey, I've played with better receivers than both of you and Devontae Adams. Possibly even Jordy Nelson. I think people will really undersell Jordy Nelson, but like, Aaron probably made a lot of Jordy Nelson, but like, how much of his Super Bowl and MVP pedigree does he bring to the table to where it kind of keeps those guys under control? So I think that'd be interesting. I mean, Mason had a great 3-game stretch with us. And at this point, like, I'm not sure it's the worst thing in the world to let Mason start for the entire season and just see what happens, because I honestly would rather see Mason just play the entire season. And I'm not a huge Mason fan. I do not like Mason Rudolph as a starting quarterback. I like him a lot as a person. I like him a lot as a teammate. I've seen so much of him over the years to see that he's like a great guy, but he's a terrible starting quarterback in the league. But if he replicates that 3-game stretch with Pittsburgh over the course of an entire season and we actually have something going there, all right, I'm fine with that. So if not, you have a bad season, we win 5 games, and we make it that much easier to trade up for Arch Manning or somebody else in this draft. I mean, I'm fine with that, honestly. Oh, yeah, 100%. Deep shots. I mean, Mason came out of college as a deep shot quarterback. Like, he throws the ball deep. He has a great deep ball. We saw that a lot in his little stretch that he ran here between he and George Pickens. The difference is it's not just George Pickens anymore. So how much more effective could he be on those deep shots with DK Metcalf and George Pickens as opposed to just George Pickens? That's the part that's kind of intriguing. And running the ball, that should be the thing. And running the ball, honestly, that's kind of where like I'm at with Aaron Rodgers. His play action fake is the best play action fake I've ever seen in my lifetime. I'm 42 years old. I've never seen a quarterback who gives a better play action fake than Aaron Rodgers. And I think that fits somewhat of what Arthur Smith wants to do. I know Aaron typically likes to run more 3 and 4, even sometimes 5 receiver sets. That's definitely not the Arthur Smith scheme. He wants to run 12 personnel, 13 personnel, and pretty much he does not care who his second receiver is. But Aaron can sell that fake about as well as anybody else I've seen. So, yeah, I'm with you on this one, actually. And I mean, I don't think a losing season. I actually said before last year that I thought we were like a team in a rebuild mode and we should have been like more committed to a full rebuild. We didn't go that route. We did go after Justin and Russ and played that game a little bit, but I felt like we should have built out this roster starting last year so that we could have used it to finalize the roster this year. And we still can. But that's just not where they're at. I mean, this team's never going to just tank to tank. So, and I agree with Tomlin playing favorites. I mean, first of all, I don't know why Cam Sutton was even on the field down the stretch last year. I mean, Cam Sutton sucked. And Beanie Bishop clearly played better, but you're right. He definitely has his favorites. So we'll see what happens. It's been a while since I've been on here, so I just wanted to jump on here and have a little quick conversation about just kind of the state of the waiting game of Aaron Rodgers and if there's anything out there better. I still don't think there is personally, but love to know what you guys think. Keep sending the comments. And I am going to get back on this again and try to get Colin or even Lowry back on here again soon so we can do another live. Hope you all have a great evening. I'm cutting it off for the night. Like, share, subscribe, all that good stuff. Talk to you later.